Hello, my name is Kim Bobby. I'm Director of the Inclusive Excellence Group at the American Council on Education, and I want to welcome you to the webinar, Making Your State Network Strategic Plan Live. I want to offer some technical assistance before we start. For technical support or assistance, please dial 202-939-9700. For question and answers, to ask a question, simply type your question into the Q&A panel on the lower right side of your screen and submit to host. You can hear the audio for this webinar in two ways. Audio broadcast, you will automatically be connected to the audio broadcast by joining the webinar. Please make sure your volume is turned on and adjusted to an audible level. Teleconference. You may call in to hear the audio by telephone. All telephone lines have been muted. To join via telephone, dial 877-668-4490 and then enter access code /meeting number 620-470-178. An archive of this webinar is being recorded. A recording of this event will be available within 5 business days of the conclusion of this event. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Leonora Ruffin, and I am Assistant Dean for Career Development at Widener University Delaware Law School, and I am so happy to be here today to present Making Your State Network Strategic Plan Live. I am an active member of Delaware ACE Women's Network, and I have been president, our executive committee, just this year. And so I just want to express thanks to ACE for allowing me to do this. I'm very interested in the topic of strategic planning because I know that when done well, it can help any organization run smoothly, and it's also a vital part of the health of the organization. So in preparing for this talk, I'm going to share what I've learned about the ingredients necessary to make a strategic plan live. I'm also going to be sharing insights from the Delaware State Network on our most recent strategic planning process, and I think it might be useful to you as you think about launching your plans. This afternoon, my goals are simple. I'm just going to shed some light on a few key issues, such as when is the best time to start planning, what values will drive the action steps of your plan, and how are you actually going to identify these values, how you can create a strategic plan that can be incorporated into the daily operation of your network, and then lastly, who needs to be at the table to make your plan live. Now, we all know the purpose of strategic planning. It's about helping to serve the members better. It's about being a better steward of resources and fulfilling your core mission. But I want to know, how often do you ask this vital question? Is it actually time for you to plan? I think you need to figure out your when. And I would suggest that your when is located at the intersection of the level of your necessity and your state of readiness. Now, you know you need to plan when your network is experiencing low member engagement, or it just has a current lack of focus. It's sort of everything but the kitchen sink approach. Let's go for volume, let's go for splash, but we don't really ask what is the impact we want to have. Or you're actually experiencing member complaints or lack of feedback. Conversely, your state of readiness is attached to the following. Do you have a core team of workers? Is your executive team engaged? And are the decks clear? Do you have some breathing room in your schedule to give it adequate focus? And also, you'll need a timetable for completion and an executive board that sees the value of planning and wants to go to the next level. So once you've pinpointed your when, I suggest you start looking at the foundation. And there's a few things that you want to know. At our network, which I'm going to refer to as Dawn for Delaware ACE Women's Network, our thought process was we're going to do everything we can to be in service of supporting women in higher education. So it makes sense for us to start there with the members. To make your plan live, you actually need to get down into the weeds of your member psyche and figure out a few key items. The first being, what are the values that are important to your particular network? The goal here is really to connect the values to the action steps. I have found that you can have a big to-do list, but unless you connect to someone's values, you really don't gain the momentum you need to push through to goal. Here, we really want to have the values act as fuel and serve as a compass when you find yourself steering off the right path. Next, you want to look at what do you do well. And now this might sound obvious, but you want to be careful here to note that what you think you may do well and what your strengths are may not be the same in the eyes of the members. Thirdly, where is there room for improvement? This can be difficult, right? Because now you're going to be looking at yourself in a more critical way. But the strategic planning process, I think, presents the perfect opportunity to fix what's not working. And then lastly, what are your members saying? Each network contains a diverse membership. But in order to make the plan live, you actually have to look for relevance and connection with that diverse membership. Relevant to the members' daily lives in higher education, and connection to their values and the things that are important to them. So to introduce this next section of slides, I thought it might be helpful to provide an overview of the life cycle of a strategic plan. To me, these are checkpoints that I have found will keep the plan fresh. In my work with strategic plans, I've noticed that you can cycle through these steps rather quickly and as often as you like, but the order seems to always be the same. Now, we've already talked about timing a little bit, but I think it's equally important to make sure you're getting an accurate sense of your members' views and concerns. I call this sort of the taking the temperature point. From this taking the temperature process, you sometimes can sense that you do have powerful energy around certain ideas and certain values and certain needs. And it's fueled by that process that I think you're ready to move to the third stage, which is crafting your vision. This vision will be aspirational, but if you do it well, you'll be able to move very smoothly into the next stage, which is the action steps. It's really hard to do the action steps before you have the vision clearly crafted because you won't know where to go. But be careful here. We often get very excited about putting action steps in our plan, but we forget to build in analysis. Even when you think you're going in the right direction, it's always best to build in analysis and evaluation into your plan. And then with all this solid data, analysis, and evaluation going on, you may see that it is time again to start planning all over, and that's how the cycle starts to move. So I'm going to be offering you a few tips here now, and the first one revolves around taking the temperature. What you see in front of you.
Hello, Leonora. This is Kim.
Yes.
We have a question for you.
Okay, great.
The question is pertaining to taking the temperature. How often do you survey the network, and is it a separate survey from the end of the year survey that ACE administers to the network?
We actually survey the members after each event, and then we had an annual survey attached to the strategic planning process. So I would say we do one big survey that is separate from an ACE survey, but is one that we crafted that relates to the strategic planning process. And we did that 3 years ago, or just about 3 years ago. In the interim, we do little surveys after each event that gather some of this information, but don't ask it in the level that we have in the strategic planning survey.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So these slides relate to some of the questions that were on the survey. And we were able to then find out where they were happy and the areas that they were feeling stressed. And as you can tell from looking at the slides, there was a recurring theme of work creating a barrier for our members really actually attending our programs. This is the kind of data that we started to make mental notes about and sort of to see whether there were themes and trends that we needed to be aware of. We weren't satisfied with just checking in with the members, though. I think it's very important when you're trying to put the strategic plan together to really check in with your executive team and figure out where you stand. We wanted to take the temperature on ourselves and see how well we were living up to the mission and core principles of ACE, Women's Network. Now, you can use any tool that you want to gather that kind of information, but this is the one that we used during one of our strategic planning sessions. And since our former strategic plan was organized around the ACE Women's Network ideals, we used that as a starting point for discussion. And I can tell you that this exercise was very helpful to me because in it, I was playing the role of strategic planning chair at the time, and it was very helpful to get a sense of where there were areas of disconnect. That is, what were our members saying about us, and what were we thinking about our own network efforts? So as we started taking the temperature, it became very clear through our research that we had strengths in providing programming and networking opportunities, and we were feeling really good about that. But interestingly enough, it was the identification of weaknesses and challenges that turned out to be most important. And hence, this is the second tip that I have for you. If you want to make your strategic plan live, be aware of your strengths, but let your weaknesses actually drive the strategic plan. You don't want to shy away from these issues. You actually want to try to attack them full on through your strategic plan. We looked at some of our weaknesses or our challenge areas and found out that although we were doing many things well, consistently timing of our programs, utilization of technology, and also incorporating members into committees were areas where our members felt like we could be doing a better job. And so when it came time to plan, those were front of mind for us. Next, you want to make sure that it's kind of related to the weakness, but this was kind of a different tip that came out of our work. When you're going through surveys and you're getting the responses from your members and something hits you, it's a red flag that goes up. This is the time, I think, that you need to be bold and also get creative. So one of the questions that really raised a red flag for us was, has Dawn assisted you in enhancing your leadership abilities? And I really think that because we thought we were hosting professional development activities, that the members were really increasing in their leadership skills, that was happening. But in essence, you can see from these results, the members didn't attribute their leadership skills to anything that we were doing, or at least 66% of them did not. Now, you have a choice here at this point. You can either get really defensive about it or even try to minimize this point. But I'm glad that we took another strategy. We decided that we really wanted to tackle this issue of leadership. And to her credit, our previous president, Julia O'Hannon, had already had the desire to do a leadership conference. But when we saw this red flag, I think we really dug in and took on that task with a vengeance, and ended up dedicating a significant part of our strategic plan to creating a leadership summit, and it's become one of our signature events, all because we embraced our red flag and didn't try to bury it. So tip 4 relates to how do you get to know your members' challenges? And here I think the main point I want to leave with you is that you don't want to assume that you really get them. we had a lot of information that was contrary to what we would have originally thought based on our own lives as women in higher education, but helped us really to tailor our strategic plan to the personality and the issues facing our members. And I can tell you that if you get to know your members' challenges, you're never more relevant than that point. When you can plan around their challenges, you know that you're going to have a big impact on their daily lives. So that was one of our goals. We wanted to have this kind of impact on their daily lives through the work that we were doing. And so we thought that we could do that by really getting to know their challenges on a deeper level. And you just see here on this slide really quickly where they came in terms of challenges. We also similarly did something of the same, with the same thrust behind it, in asking about professional skills and really trying to figure out what skills did they want assistance in building. And you can see that there were a lot of people who wanted to get on top of social networking, to using that as a vehicle to advance their career. And you know, you may find that in doing this that you actually need to tool up in certain areas. So the strategic plan gives you the opportunity to look at what your network really needs and figure out, do you actually have the resources to meet that need, or at least to make a decision about what you're going to do to address their needs or get them the support that they may need. I find that when you can ask questions around skill building needs, you have found a quick way to identify where areas where you can provide immediate value to your members. So if you're putting together any survey, I would not leave this question off.
Hello, Lenore. We have a question.
Okay, great.
This participant wants to know if you will be willing to share the survey you used with the network.
I don't see any problem in that. I will put that or provide it to you and make that available.
Yes, we'll send it out. Thank you.
Okay, great. And you know, I should say that the survey itself was pretty quick and pretty short because we wanted people to answer it. But I think if you pick the right questions and you know what you want to do with the information, then that's really the key. Tip 5. Now, if we remember that original slides, a few slides back where I looked at the life cycle of the strategic plan, now having created a lot of data and at our disposal, we were ready to turn our attention to the vision statement. And I should say that what we did, and you can do it differently, but what we did in our network is we had a strategic planning subcommittee, of which I was the chair. And it was a small group. There were only 3 of us. But we took on that role and did a lot of the drafting of the plan. We were feeling at this point, having looked at the data and looking at our strengths and some of our challenges, we were feeling really confident at this point. And we thought that we had the seeds of the next level being planted right at that moment. In particular, we knew the member survey data best, so we were really excited about the prospect of challenging the executive committee to be daring and to be bold. So what you see on this slide is our original draft vision statement, and I'm only giving you a partial of it here. And the thing to note is that in that first statement, the verb there is drive, that we will drive the creation of higher education environment. And it's also where our tip comes in. When you have a big, okay.
Around this, and I think it's really related to this section, we have some newer networks, and how do they get any advice on, you know, how does a new network get up and running and increase their membership so that it can embark on strategic planning in a meaningful way?
Well, I think creating community, I think, is where I would start, you know, and relationships. So, and also because you need to really, excuse me, you really need to make sure that you see each other as a cohesive group first before you can start to plan around sort of having this strategic plan. So doing short surveys, check-in surveys to see what the needs are of the membership, and it could be anything across the board. Just sort of figuring out who are they, where are they at this point, and what do they need to do their jobs better, and what are their goals, right? So part of the strategic plan is to help them realize that ACE Women's Network is there to help them go to their next level. But you got to know what that next level is for them personally. It may be to eventually rise in ranks to be president of a university or a provost, or it might be I just want a promotion this year. Whatever it is, there's a place for you as an executive team to fit into their life. So I would actually start there. As you start to really meet their needs and they start to see you as a resource, then I think it becomes easier to make a plan around it that really relates to their values.
Okay, thank you. You have another question.
Okay.
Do you recommend a needs assessment of the members?
Yes, I do. Whatever you think that form that should come in for us, we do something akin to that on a regular basis, in that after events, we have surveys that go out that will say, how else can we assist you? And, it's a little kind of soft pedaling that question in on a pretty regular basis. But if you want to do a bigger, more developed needs assessment, we didn't do that. We just sort of had the survey. Yes, I think take that on. Because then you can know from the outset whether or not you are ready to meet those needs. Do you have the resources available? Maybe you need to plug in more with the national network to get support there to meet the global needs of your network.
Okay, thank you. You have another question. If the board exists first, your governing board or executive board, then can strategic planning begin from there first without being top-down?
So the board exists first. You don't have any members yet. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess it would have to if you. Well, you are already guided in a sense, because there's a strategic plan for our national organization, so you have some guidance there. I think when you start to plan, the plan is really to make sure you're implementing the goal of that organization, and also to be assistance of your main constituents. So there is sort of a missing piece here. I would try to get at least a small cohort assembled first, so that you know that you're really pulling at a plan that's going to resonate. I think it's difficult to plan without first having an object for that plan and a clear vision for that group. And every group is different. Even though we are part of a national organization, the state chapters, I think, this is just my opinion, will have their own character and personality. You as an executive team will be guided by the national, and you'll know what your mission is. And so I think just be about your mission. Be about that national mission. Check in with them. Make small surveys. I like focus groups. So even if you don't have a huge membership yet, you can still do, a quarterly focus group, something low-key. Go to a particular university and do brown bag lunches around a certain topic. Get to know the people that are in the various schools that are in part of your network, and then you can get a sense of how to start planning, even without having a fully developed membership, I think.
Thank you, Lenora, and that is exactly good advice, because I've seen networks that are just starting do just exactly what you said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to finish this point here. When we finally got to the point of doing the current vision statement that you see here, you can tell that it really, I think, infuses a lot more of our network's personality. We eventually settled on a statement that I think is a healthy balance of proactive energy that we wanted to reflect, but is really tempered by our very member-centered approach. I think if we had to put something forth as part of sort of what we want to be known for, is that very member-centered approach. In essence, our vision is reflective of the values and our belief that our success is coming from our ability to support and empower women in Delaware. So that's something that we can come back to very often. When you get to the point of putting your vision statement together, make sure that it resonates with you and it reflects the impact you want to have in your network, and it can serve as a guide to decision making in the future. As we were drafting the mission statement, this went down a little bit more easily for us because we simply just tracked the language of national and placed a special emphasis on ACE Women Network ideals. So you don't have to recreate the wheel, for your strategic planning work. There's lots of good examples. I already found good examples online and through some of the handbooks that we have, and you want to refer to those, I think, as you're planning, as we did. So tip 6 involves where we really are starting to get down to how do you make this live. And I call this getting on the same page. After you refine the vision and the mission statement to your liking, then I think, and only then, do you want to go about creating action steps and strategies. We as a strategic planning subcommittee did just that. We did the first draft of the plan, and then we presented it to the executive committee as part of our strategic planning retreat. We were able to tweak the language a little bit all together as a group. But if we had just stopped there, and this is important, if you just stop there at putting the plan together, then this is just a plan that's going to sit on the shelf. We knew we needed to go further. So what we did, and you see it here, is we used modified project management principles to make sure that our action steps stayed front in mind. In essence, the goal for us, and the key really for us, was to make sure and get everyone on the executive committee to agree that every action step that we put in our strategic plan had to have a home, okay? And that meant that there had to be an accountability structure and a timeline for getting the work done. So you see here that we, we have a committee for each strategy, and we have looked at the timeline. Our strategic plan was over a 3-year arc, and we're in the last year right now. And so we wanted to make sure that every strategy sort of had a home within sort of the global timeline of this strategic plan. Of course, money is always important, and I think if you have anything, if you're trying to be bold and this is a next level plan, then money is going to be on the table. And you have to figure out, well, how much do we want to spend for each of the things that we're saying we want to do? Resources, that's about where do we need help? We have this great idea, but we don't have everything we need. Where can we get it? Who's available to us? Communication plan, this is key too. Once you have a strategy, I often find that where it falls down is that you have 3 people who know what to do to execute on the strategy, but the 4th person, who is key, is a little fuzzy around the edges in terms of the details. So the communication plan is who's going to be responsible for making sure that the communication goes out, and what mechanism are we going to use? Is it going to be, monthly reports? Are we going to do it through email or Facebook, or how are we just going to get the communication flow going? And then lastly, the progress report. This could be verbal at your monthly meetings or your quarterly meetings, however often you feel is necessary. What we did was we looked at each strategy and thought, when would be the likely timetable for finishing this particular goal? So in year 1, would it take 6 months to do it, or is this something that we plan to turn around pretty quickly within a month or 2? And we try to make those progress report due dates align with what we thought was the time involved or the investment of time involved in getting to completion. So this is something that we review this, and we use this plan. The whole plan is filled in. We have that, and what we do and what we did at the beginning of this year was actually pull this plan out and said, okay, well, what did we say we were going to do in year 2 or year 3? you might have to switch those things around, but eventually you'll get to the things that really matter to you within that strategic plan. I won't say it's everything, but you'll more than likely get to the things that really made a difference for you, or really you think will make a difference for your membership. And here we go with fitting the pieces together. This is something that, when I thought about it, even having a plan on paper in a project management sort of format, even that may not be enough. So the fitting the pieces together is the stage where you look at all the other parts of your network operation that really need to be functioning and working together well in order for your strategic plan to flow. And a really important piece of it here is subcommittees. So if you're a network that's just starting out, for example, and you really don't even have subcommittees, I understand exactly what you're talking about. Before we really worked with this strategic plan, I would say when I first joined Dawn, we did everything as an executive committee together, collectively. If there was a decision to be made, it was going to be made at that table at that monthly meeting. And it worked really well. But as you start to move out of that and want to do different things, then you start to incorporate more subcommittees into your network. And because our plan depended so much on having highly functioning subcommittees, this is where we spend a lot of time sort of trying to shore them up. I spend a lot of time working with the committee chairs to make sure they understand the implications of their role, making sure they feel comfortable, have a point of focus, and are working on things in a given year that they feel comfortable with, that they feel like they can bring their skills and talents to. Similarly, for budget planning, there were a couple of items that we knew that were going to go to the next level in terms of cost. And so you want to make sure that you dedicate time within your budget planning process, whether you do that annually or twice a year, to just make sure that you have incorporated things that will take money and it's not really a supply. Communication plan is a little bit what I've talked about before, making sure you're putting that plan consistently on the table. I brought it back out when I started my time as president at the retreat. I brought it back out at the first meeting, and then when the committees were planning what they wanted to do this year, I asked them to use it as a tool to actually pick and choose, to cherry pick from the strategic plan the things that they wanted to work on this year. And then lastly, you want to look at your evaluation and analysis. I thought it was important to really have or create multiple check-in points. So at each monthly meeting, time is going to be set aside to check in on committee work. But prior to that, I'm going to have connected with the committee chairs several times during the month to provide them with feedback. I want to give them clarifications, approval. I'm also looking to troubleshoot and brainstorm and give them support. The assessment piece comes in because we survey the members, as I've said before, about whether or not they were satisfied with the things that we've been working on in the form of events usually. And this data gets incorporated into the strategic planning process and also into the annual planning. So as you can see altogether, these are things that will help the plan really stick together over the course of the 3 years or however long you decide to do it. Without each of these pieces, I think you might find yourself having to go back to square one. You'll have, to diagnose what happened here. Why didn't we feel as excited about the plan as we thought we would when we first started drafting it? So these are some of the tips that I wanted to offer you. We're going to be putting our strategic plan or providing a link to our strategic plan as well. But I think at this point, Kim, we have time for some questions if you would want to open it up for that.
You do have a question. This first question is regarding when you were a new networker. Or have you kept the historical documents to see how the network has progressed and how you have used your plan to address issues that are changing for women?
Well, I would say that the last strategic plan that we had before this one was more like a strategic plan where it worked in the beginning, but it was a long time in between that plan and the one we have now. So I would say that probably there's not the same sort of syncing up with our membership with that earlier plan that this one has. And in terms of historically, have we used the plan to? Can you just clarify that last part of that question? Again, I'm trying
Yeah,
to make sure I understand the thread there.
yeah. So how did when you were a new work network, how did that inform the strategic plan at that time? How did that inform how the network has progressed and that you're addressing the changing needs of women?
I don't know that we used the strategic plan for that purpose when we were a newer network. If I have to be honest about it, I think that it was one of the things that we did and did well at the time, and then we used it for a short time frame, and then there was a long time that lapsed in between. I would say though that instead of the strategic plan, there was still that shoring up of relationships. I don't think we ever lost the focus of our mission. And that's even though we might not have been using the plan specifically, I think that vision and that mission really guided us in those years where we may not have been using the plan as sort of like an actual planning document. So if you have a strong vision and you have a strong mission, you will be checking in on changing trends. We also did have the survey, so that was a real-time tool that you can use to check in with your members and to stay on point with changing issues and changing challenges that are happening in your network, even if you don't have a plan. So I don't want to present that if you don't have a plan, everything's going to fall apart. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but I think it will help you go to your next level.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Well, if there aren't any more questions, Lenora, we just want to thank you for the time and the thoroughness of your presentation. This webinar is now a part of, oh, we do have a question. How involved was your presidential sponsor in this process?
Well, I think our presidential sponsor has been very involved in our network, just in general, just making sure that we have the resources that we need and providing a lot of talent. We actually have a lot of our members, executive committee members, who are from the same organization as our presidential sponsor. So I think the presidential sponsor was involved in that. A lot of the thought leadership comes from that organization. And has been and actually the founder as well for our network has come from that organization. But from a day-to-day sort of planning, I don't think we included them necessarily in the planning process per se. But I would think their contribution comes more in the form of talent leadership and thought leadership to our executive committee.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This has been really, really great. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I will also provide my email address as well if anyone should think of a question after this act and wanted to continue the conversation, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. And as I was saying, I wanted to just remind you all that we have our conference call next Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time for the state coordinators. That's October 22nd. We also have our state coordinators conference coming up March 12th and 13th, 2016. That's in San Francisco, and that's right before the ACE annual meeting. We do hope that you will all be able to attend that and stay over for the annual meeting, especially because we have our Advancing Women's session on that Monday. And with that, if we don't have any more questions, we look forward to sharing this webinar as a part of the resources in our State Coordinators Handbook. And we want to hear from you. If there's other subject matters that you'd like webinars on, please let us know. And with that, I think we're going to say thank you again to Lenore, and you all have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much.